All right, my friends, it is Saturday, September 28th, and here are about 7 big stories for you. So we're going to start here. Hezbollah has confirmed the death of the #1 Hezbollah leader, and that's a pretty significant shock to the system there in the Middle East. The IDF, that's the Israeli Defense Force, is conducting a decapitation campaign targeting senior Hezbollah leadership as part of its air campaign across Lebanon. This campaign could impact Hezbollah's ability to effectively organize and direct its forces. Yep, it looks like they're getting pretty much all of them, and they're not just stopping with what they're doing on the ground. A cargo flight from Iran, supposed to land at the Beirut airport, has turned around after Israel informed the air traffic control at the airport that Israel would launch airstrikes against the plane if it landed in Beirut. Israel won't allow IRGC weapons into Lebanon. So again, they're just, I mean, okay. Israel is stiff arming Iran, and Iran is the supporter of Hezbollah, and Iran is also a big supporter of Russia. So this matters, and for multiple reasons. It's confirmed that the general secretary of Hezbollah has been eliminated. It's a full deck. The entire leadership of the terrorist organization Hezbollah was eliminated in less than 2 weeks. Okay, now they're all connected here. Hezbollah, Hamas, Russia, Iran, North Korea, Venezuela. They're all allies. They all kind of support each other. But look at this. This is what Israel has decapitated in the last few weeks. All of these guys have been eliminated. So, yeah, okay. Now, President Biden put out a statement that this guy, the terrorist group that he led in Hezbollah, were responsible for killing hundreds of Americans over a 4-decade reign of terror. His death from an Israeli airstrike is a measure of justice for his many victims, including thousands of Americans, Israelis, and Lebanese civilians. So this is President Biden's statement about that. Now, this professor, he's Professor Francis Balou. I think that's how you say that. He's a professor of infectious disease and epidemiology. He says whether the IDF suspected that Nasrallah was in this block of flats that got flattened or just made it up as a story is largely irrelevant. This is a war crime either way. To that, Ryan Macbeth asked, do you want to be in a Ryan Macbeth video? Because this is how you end up in a Ryan Macbeth video. Apparently, you don't seem to have any military or legal expertise. That's pretty interesting that you are making these without any knowledge of the subject matter. My comment to Ryan was this wins the prize for the best Twitter comment because, yeah, people say stupid stuff all the time out on Twitter, and you have to understand what you're talking about before you talk about it. Garry Kasparov said Israel can strike in Lebanon to defend itself and its people with U.S.-made weapons. Good, but Ukraine cannot strike in Russia to defend itself and its people with U.S.-made weapons. The idea that the provenance of this or that weapon really matters to Putin is embarrassingly absurd. Right, because he said that after Lloyd Austin, the Secretary of Defense, said, I spoke twice with the Israeli Minister of Defense yesterday about events in Lebanon. I expressed my full support for Israel's right to defend itself and its people against Iranian-backed terrorist groups. Well, but what about the support for Ukraine? I mean, you should be doing the same thing, right? But they're not. Okay, so Phil Gordon, he said the United States supports Ukraine not only out of charity, but because it's in our strategic interest. Okay, yeah, that's great. I concur. We're aligned because we see things the same way that they see things. It's not like we're just giving you money just because you're a sad story. We have similar interests. I hope that Phil Gordon, VP NSA, truly understands what Sullivan does not. And I think he does. I don't know how well that'll play out later on, but okay. Meanwhile, Zelensky, Garry Kasparov says, Zelensky is obligated to cover every base, to do anything that might help the survival of his people and nation. But there's a fundamental disconnect with Trump. Any Ukrainian victory in any real peace means Russia must lose, and Trump can never say that. He just can't bring himself to say that kind of thing, whether it's because he really doesn't want it or whether he's worried about his negotiating position later on. Whatever it is, he just has not been willing to say that sort of thing. let's talk about this. I don't quite understand this. Jason J. Smart posted this during Zelensky's visit to the United States. He received a clear signal from the White House and the Pentagon that Yermak's attempt to dismiss Budanov would have negative consequences for the cooperation between the intelligence communities of the U.S. and Ukraine. I don't really know all about the machinations between Yermak and Budanov, and Budanov seems to be doing a good job. I've heard more negative things about Yermak than Budanov, but apparently Yermak is trying to get Budanov dismissed. If you know something about that I don't know, please put that in the comments below or point me to an article. Okay. Meanwhile, the Institute for the Study of War suggests that Russia's covert operations aimed at undermining European stability and NATO readiness are likely to persist, regardless of whether Ukraine receives long-range strike capabilities from Western allies. It's not like, if you do this, we're going to do that. We're going to do that regardless of if you do this, but we're going to say if you do this, it's going to get worse. At the UN Assembly, Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov stated that, quote, it is foolish and dangerous to try to fight for victory against a nuclear state like Russia, unquote. Well, yeah, but you can't use the nukes. So it's not foolish because your conventional forces just aren't that good. Now, this is Darth Putin talking about how you Westerners, you'll let me create 10 million Ukrainian refugees and you still think you avoided escalation? Man, this guy, he's profound in the statements that he puts forward. Now, we're talking about Trump, and I get it. You should be saying what you say about Trump, but you should also be saying something about Biden too, especially if you like Biden, because his legacy is going to be very mixed, if not bad, by the end of this. Harris made a good statement. This is Kasparov again. Harris made a good statement. With Zelensky and Trump made an absurd one, but do not forget that Biden is president until January 20th. He is condemning more Ukrainians to death by refusing to allow long-range strikes against the Russian weapons, killing them. That is his legacy. 100%. This is his legacy. I know lots of you before Biden dropped out and Harris became the nominee were saying Biden all the way. Okay, take some of that fervor and direct it against Biden now to say, Biden, please, you've got to let them use those, let them strike back. Okay, Mitch McConnell was saying something really interesting. Now we're going to listen to what he had to say here. It's the nexus of Ukraine and the border bill and how we got on this path. But Mitch McConnell, the Republican minority leader in the Senate, said this about Trump.
Know the answer. I think the demonization of Ukraine began by Tucker Carlson, who, in my opinion, ended up where he should have been all along, which is interviewing Vladimir Putin. And so he had an enormous audience, which convinced a lot of rank and file Republicans that maybe this was a mistake. I think the former president had sort of mixed views on it. We all felt that the border was a complete disaster, myself included. And Chad, you remember covering the phases we went through. First, there was an effort to make law, which requires you to deal with Democrats. And then a number of our members thought it wasn't good enough. And then our nominee for president didn't seem to want us to do anything at all. That took months to work our way through it.
Okay, so what he was talking about was Tucker Carlson was really leading the anti-Ukraine charge, and Trump at the time just had mixed views on it. But rank and file Republicans pre-Tucker Carlson viewed this like I do, and they think more in terms of, well, of course we should support Ukraine against authoritarian aggression, but that's not what happened with Tucker and the populists moving them into a whole different place. And then Trump ran out in front of that crowd and said, I'm your leader of the populist kind of crowd. And that's where we are. Okay, let's shift gears here. Interesting picture of how the trade with Russia in the EU changed since the beginning of the war. So you'll see a line and then you'll see before and after for each country. And I just want to show you this so that you can see how different countries acted or reacted in trading with Russia. Business with Russia means death to Ukrainians because the money goes as taxes to the Russian government, a great part of which is spent on weapons for soldiers' salaries. And here we're going to start with this. So here's the line. The country here is Slovenia. And where did they end up just before the war? About here, okay? And now they're still about here, but in the meantime, they traded quite a bit with Russia. And then you see Croatia, and you see a similar kind of spike. You see Bulgaria, similar spike, and now they're down to a low. You see Ireland, who was fine, and now they're even higher trading with Russia. What's going on with Ireland? And then we see Latvia that has spiked a little bit and gradually kind of moved down and down and down. Okay, let's look at the second tier here. Estonia. This is where their trade was, and it's been consistently below. You see Belgium. Belgium was trading here, and it dropped, and it just kind of stayed low. Italy surprised me because Italy doesn't strike me as very in the corner of Ukraine, but look at their trade. They dropped it and just stayed down very low. Hungary even stopped. There's this little patch here, and I wonder what's going on here, but Hungary even stayed low. Cyprus dropped through the floor and just stayed down. Let's see here. Greece spiked a little bit here and then stayed low. Lithuania just went down and just stayed down. Good on Lithuania. Poland, same kind of dynamic. Portugal stayed pretty low compared to previous trade. Spain, again, these are great, right? The Netherlands, like Lithuania, just dropped, and Poland and dropped and stayed low. Germany dropped and stayed low. Sweden, well, they dropped. They went up and down a little bit, but up and down a little bit on the very low end. France dropped like a rock and stayed there. Finland dropped and went up a little bit and down a little bit, but Finland kind of went down and just stayed down compared to where it was, relative to where it was. Slovakia dropped like a rock. Romania dropped like a rock. Czechia dropped like a rock. Denmark dropped pretty low. Luxembourg dropped like a rock. So that's where different European countries were. And this tells you a lot about whether you're going to be trying to get away with something or whether you're going to be really supporting Ukraine. Okay, last big story. So I talked about this a week or so ago where the IMF was going to go start a new mission to Russia, and they axed this trip. They were going to visit Russia and re-engage with Russia. And here's the language in here. But a letter addressed to the IMF boss last week, financial ministers from Lithuania, Estonia, Latvia, Sweden, Finland, Denmark, Norway, Iceland, Poland warned that the visit would be used for propaganda purposes by the Russian regime and create substantial reputation risks for the Washington-based organization, the International Monetary Fund. And that's what happened. That was just a week or so ago. Now, Timothy Milovanov, he is the economics, the president of the Kiev School of Economics. He's a former minister of economy. He had put this out this week in Washington. I've been told that the IMF leadership has read our op-eds when deciding against the IMF mission to Russia. If true, it shows that a voice and truth still matter in politics and policy. Now, it wasn't just him, but still, it does matter what is done. You can argue for your cause and persuade others, even if the deck is stacked against you. You can coordinate a policy protest effort among stakeholders and people who care. You can do it analytically. You can win. Good on him and good on the foreign ministers from those countries who were working hard to keep the IMF from just saying, you know what, Russia, doesn't matter what you're doing. We're going to open up normal relations with you again. Okay, last little bit. I saw this and I thought, wow. And then I thought, wow. China set a world record by staging the largest drone show in history. 7,598 drones were launched simultaneously, all controlled by a single laptop. That's drones up in the air. That's what you're seeing here. Now, it struck me that if the Chinese can do that with their drones, they can also do some other things, some very bad things with drones. And the Chinese are learning their lessons from the Ukraine war and trying to figure out how to, they're going to have swarming drones too. And so the next war, when China is involved, is going to be very, very drone based. Because if they can do this, which is pretty awesome to see, they can do this, which is not going to be awesome to see. All right, my friends, that's all that I have for you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the likes, the shares, and the subscribes. And thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.